Okay, well, if we are now on page 97, agenda item 9, and John is going to lead us in this, so I will hand straight over to John.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just make sure the clicker's working. It is. So Leeds City Council is seeking planning permission and listed building consent to redevelop land at 4 to 32 George Street. The proposal includes a 6-storey building with commercial units at ground floor and hotel at upper floors, with the hotel operator now confirmed as Premier Inn. Consent was granted for a similar proposal in 2018. However, this consent has since lapsed. This application has been subject to a pre-application inquiry, which was presented at City Plans panel on the 22nd of June this year. Members considered the proposed uses acceptable and broadly considered the proposed mass and form of the development acceptable. However, members stressed the importance of resolving issues around landscaping, highways and sustainability. The application site extends along the south side of George Street, north of Kirkgate Market in the eastern part of Leeds City Centre. To the north, on the opposite side of George Street, is Victoria Gate Shopping Centre, and to the southeast is Leeds City Bus Station. The proposed development will replace long vacant, low-level retail units. And this series of photos shows the site as it steps down George Street. At its western end is the Grade 1 listed Leeming House, followed by a row of 1930s single-storey flat-roofed commercial units. Then there is a break in the building line which marks the entrance to the market, followed by a run of 2-storey 1980s shops. And the application site ends where the 1980s buildings terminate. Moving along the rear of the site, again west to east, is Butcher's Row, which opens into the market hall. This slide gives an impression of the scale and massing of the building. The entrances to the market will be retained, with the market entrance in the middle of the site redeveloped. And this image further refines the model by adding window and roofing detail. Moving on to the elevation drawings. This is the George Street elevation. The elevations are primarily constructed of a red multi-brick and capped with a zinc-clad mansard roof. The building steps down the hill to maintain proportionate building heights and create defined breaks in the building facade along the street. This gives the impression that the street scene is not read as a single building, but is broken into multiple sections. The development will be set back from the flank wall of Leeming House in order to provide breathing space to the listed building. The market entrance is one of the critical elements of the proposed development, as it will provide the market with a new front door. The proposal seeks to create a high-quality focal entrance to the market from George Street with a glass curtain wall design. And the commercial units along George Street include a high proportion of glazing to allow activity within the units to be seen from the street. The George Street elevation has been designed to reference and remain subservient to Leeming House. Leeming House has a defined base, middle and top, with the base consisting of a double height space for retail units, the middle portion featuring 3 stories of paired windows, and the top having a complex and decorative roofscape with dormer windows. The verticality of Leeming House has been captured in the proposed design, with strong brick piers in a regular arrangement along the elevation and the window voids of a similar scale and proportion. The roof form has been developed to relate to Leeming House and has dormers which penetrate the roof plane. These dormers have a feature curved top which references the more decorative and ornate detailing on the listed building. The rear elevation would only be visible from a restricted number of ground level locations and from some elevated positions within buildings to the south. It would be of a much simpler design, which reflects the simple aesthetic of the rear elevations to Leeming House. It would be composed of a red brick and feature regular window patterns on its western side. A gantry for condensers would be situated above the market hall roof. A glazed white brick finish is proposed to the internal elevation along Butcher's Row, and a painted blockwork finish is proposed to the market hall interior. The side elevations also reflect the simple gable form of Leeming House. However, brick detailing, including projecting string courses and projecting headers rising vertically up the building, add interest. The gable facing the outdoor market, shown in the image on the left, also includes several windows. It's also worth noting that the commemorative plaque on the external wall of Leeming House will be repositioned to remain visible. To give an indication of how the rear and side elevations will be perceived, the next slides are photos looking toward the site from the outdoor market. This photo is taken from the southeast corner of the outdoor market. You can see the rear elevation will be largely screened in this view, with views further restricted as you move closer to the site. In terms of the gable, this would sit behind an existing single-storey toilet block shown in the foreground of this photo. The applicant has also undertaken their own computer modelling to show how the development will be perceived. In most long-distance views, the development will be entirely screened by existing buildings and infrastructure. Where there is potential to catch sight of the development, views are likely to be fleeting and mostly obscured. The side gable would be visible on the approach to George Street and from parts of the outdoor market. The council's design and conservation teams, as well as Historic England, have no objection to the design and appearance of the proposed development. Any harm to the listed building is considered less than substantial and clearly outweighed by wider benefits. Moving on to the floor plans. The ground floor will contain 6 commercial units. The largest unit, shown in green, will be occupied by a council-run gym. No end users have yet been agreed for the other 5 units, shown in blue. It is proposed the ground floor units are consented to have flexible commercial uses, including shops, cafes, restaurants, drinking establishments, and hot food takeaways, though the number of hot food takeaways would be restricted in accordance with the council's hot food takeaway SPD. Aside from the gym, all units would have through access from George Street to the market. To establish active frontages, the commercial units would have a high proportion of glazing. The ground floor also includes separate bike and bin stores for the hotel and commercial units. In total, the development will provide 12 long-stay cycle spaces and 18 short-stay cycle spaces. Primary Inn also has a policy whereby bikes can be stored in hotel rooms. The upper floors would include a hotel reception bar area at first floor and 4 floors of hotel accommodation above, with 143 bedrooms. The hotel would have 7 accessible rooms, with 2 designed to interconnect into family rooms and 1 with a ceiling mounted hoist. The proposal does not include any car parking. It's anticipated most guests to the hotel will arrive by public transport, with the bus and train station close by. For those travelling by car, it is expected they will require long stay parking and therefore make use of the multi-storey car parks in the vicinity, including Victoria Car Park and the Markets Car Park, which offer a total of 1,451 parking spaces. In terms of accessible parking, there are 3 on-street accessible bays along George Street and 4 on-street accessible bays on Eastgate next to John Lewis. The nearby Victoria Car Park and the Markets Car Park have a combined total of 70 accessible parking spaces. To ensure there is adequate provision for deliveries to the hotel, the proposal includes an amendment to the existing traffic regulation order along part of George Street. The change would apply to a 21-metre stretch along the hotel frontage, which amounts to circa 3 car parking bays, which are shown here in green, if I can just point towards it. Currently, the bays can be used for deliveries and parking with a wait time of up to 20 minutes. The proposal seeks to restrict the bays to deliveries only and increase the wait time to 40 minutes. Although this would result in the loss of 3 short-stay parking spaces, albeit these bays can also be used for deliveries, the Council's Highways team, in consultation with Leeds City Council Traffic, consider the proposal acceptable. To ensure market traders would not be unduly impacted, the proposals have been discussed with the Council's Head of Markets. It is understood outdoor market traders are allowed to bring delivery vehicles onto the outdoor market when setting up and clearing up. In terms of the indoor market, all stores are fixed and therefore most stock is kept on site. It is expected the market can withstand the extra demand for loading bays on George Street. The application includes a travel plan, which sets out how the hotel operator, Premier Inn, will encourage staff and guests to use sustainable modes of travel. The travel plan includes targets aimed at increasing the proportion of staff who walk and cycle into work and increasing the number of guests arriving by sustainable modes of transport. To ensure progress is made toward these targets, a travel plan review will be submitted annually. The cost of reviewing these reports will be secured via a legal agreement. Although the panel report states this would be by a unilateral undertaking, it is now understood Section 111 is the preferred mechanism. There are very few opportunities to introduce soft landscaping due to the built-up and constrained nature of the site. As per comments made at pre-application, the applicant has considered the introduction of street trees. The area outside the market entrance, where the footway extends out, was identified as a potential location as shown on this plan. I'll just point to it just here. But unfortunately, following further feasibility work and discussions with Yorkshire Water, the applicant has advised it's not possible to deliver these trees due to a proposed water main to be installed within the pavement, which requires a minimum easement of 2 to 3 metres either side. The applicant also considered planting trees on the north side of the footway, but again, an existing water main and other underground services prevent this. As a result, the applicant proposes upgrading the existing movable planters outside the redeveloped market entrance, the details of which would be conditioned. In terms of the footway along the frontage of the building, this would be resurfaced to match the recent paving on the north side of George Street. This image just shows the proposed development would retain good links through to the market and wider area, with the market entrances retained and several of the commercial units providing through access. And these are CGIs of the proposed development. This one is looking at the redeveloped market entrance with Leeming House in the distance. This is along Butchers Row with the rear elevation of the proposed development on the right-hand side of the image. This is looking back along George Street. And the final image is a closer view of the market entrance. The proposed development complies with the council's energy policies and sustainability targets. 78% of the development's total energy consumption will be met by low carbon technology in the form of solar panels and air source heat pumps. This is substantially higher than the 10% required by policy. It is also expected that 15,458 kilograms of carbon dioxide per annum will be saved through energy efficiency methods and low carbon technologies, which represents an improvement of 20.02% beyond the requirements of building regulations Part L 2021, which again meets the council's 20% target. The development is also expected to achieve a BREEAM rating of excellent. In terms of statutory consultation, site notices were posted in and around the site and an advert was published in the Yorkshire Evening Post. Only one representation from Leeds Civic Trust was received. The Trust supports the proposal, but suggested more windows could be inserted into the rear elevation. Having discussed with the applicant, their position is this would create maintenance issues since the windows require abseiling from the roof deck to clean, which would be made complicated by the siting of the plant gantry. The windows currently shown in the rear elevation and which serve hotel bedrooms are set away from the gantry. Furthermore, in terms of appearance, the rear elevation is largely hidden in public views, and it's worth noting that improvements were sought during pre-application, which included a change from a render to brick finish. Notwithstanding the statutory consultation, the applicant has undertaken their own public consultation. This included a meeting with the Kirkgate Market Board, a letter issued to around 1,130 residential and commercial properties, a digital flyer within Kirkgate Market, a media release and social media activity, and a public consultation event held in the market. A website was also launched in June, which included information about the proposal, as well as an online feedback form with contact details for people to ask questions. A total of 49 online responses were received. These comments are listed in the statement of community involvement. In total, 34 comments were in favour of the scheme, 7 neutral, and 8 against. Those supporting the scheme highlighted the positive design, regeneration of the area, the need for a hotel and gym, increased footfall and benefits to the market. Negative comments included poor design, extra traffic, waste of council money, adverse impacts on the market and further gentrification. Respondents were also keen to ensure that the development adhered to the highest environmental standards. In conclusion, officers consider the proposal represents an opportunity to continue the positive regeneration of this part of the city, which has so far been delivered with the completion of the Victoria Gate scheme and refurbishment of the Leeds market. The proposed uses would bring about a further positive impact on the vitality and viability of this part of the city centre, and the proposed hotel would make a positive contribution to the tourism and leisure function of the city centre. It is therefore recommended the full application and listed building consent application are deferred and delegated to the Chief Planning Officer for approval, subject to the planning conditions set out in paragraphs 17 and 18 of the officer report. and a legal agreement to secure the travel plan review fee. Lastly, just as an addendum, I just want to advise members that the panel report erroneously omitted the following saved UDP policies. There's policy PD3 on suitable access for disabled people, policy N17 on protecting existing features which contribute to the character of listed building, and policy N18A on the presumption against demolition, which contributes to the character of a conservation area. However, none of this changes the assessment or recommendations set out in the panel report or presentation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, John, for that thorough presentation. There are no objectors to this application, but the applicants are in the audience if we need to ask them anything directly. So can I then start off by taking questions? Councillor Blackburn?
I'll ask the same question as I've done on three previous occasions. The plaque at the back of Leeming House, how we're going to get access to that, how we're going to see it.
John, would you like to take that one?
I'll just, Lewis, do you mind just bringing up the elevation of Great George Street? It might help explain what's happening with the plaque. Perfect. It's not particularly visible. I'll point to it though. So the plaque currently sits on the flank wall of Leeming House. The proposal is to build this brick exposed wall here that would abut Leeming House, and so essentially the plaque would be transitioned from the flank wall Leeming House onto this building, so it sit sort of within inside this unit, so it remain on display. But in terms of the details of repositioning, we'd be covering that with the condition, so those details would come in.
All right with that, David, or do you want to come back?
I've got to say, I didn't know that plaque was there till I went on the first site visit when we first looked at it. So, but a lot of people don't realise it's there, but it's history, isn't it?
Thank you. Any further questions for officers? Councillor Anderson.
Couple of points. One is, I do have concerns about the highways impacts on this. You've said that it's anticipated that the market traders should be able to operate within this. But what happens if I'm right and you're wrong? As someone who has been involved with the market for a number of years and got the scars because of the kicking that I've had on a number of occasions, things are not always predictable in terms of with the market traders. So how are we going to solve that? How are we going to solve the conflicts that when a lot of people will be coming and going, either at the market and also leaving and coming and going to the Premier Inn, and also servicing? How are you going to deal with that particular conflict? So that's number one. Then question number two, in tech to the trees. Was that information about the trees not being possible, did that come from the tree officers, namely Glenn Gorner, who has extensive experience of being able to get trees planted on Dortmund Square, on an area that you wouldn't normally expect a tree to be able to go? He is experienced, he is very knowledgeable. So does he agree that the trees couldn't be put in, because he has got some innovative ideas about how to do it? And the other thing is, as was remarked this morning, if there is going to be a lot of queuing traffic and people parking in the middle of the road effectively to unload, it is possible for some vehicles to drive up on the pavement to get round it. How are you going to stop that occurring?
Okay, in terms of the conflicts and the parking on George Street, we acknowledge that there is a lot of demand for the curb space down there, but it is a dynamic sort of situation that all we can do is really manage the demand and manage the situation. We are of the view that the hotel in itself will not make the situation any worse. Changing the TROs will have a negligible impact negatively on the markets. We have had dialogue with the market manager, who is supportive of the scheme. If there is problems, colleagues in traffic and in parking, they monitor these kind of busy city centre locations. We do have, I think there's probably cameras cover this area as well. I acknowledge that, yes, it is a busy area, but I also anticipate that some of the movements will be happening at different times. And I think if there's drop off at the hotel, that is very momentary and shouldn't cause an issue. There's a taxi rank just a bit further down towards the bus station. No vehicle should be obstructing the carriageway. But if that would happens, I'm not aware of it being a problem of vehicles driving down the other footway. Acknowledge that it is a nice wide footway, which is good for pedestrian movement, and it is illegal to drive on the footway. So if any private hire or taxi vehicle was seen to be doing that, they'd be at risk of losing their license. So I suppose it's something that we will monitor on an ongoing basis, as all the streets, especially in the city centre, are monitored. But we are comfortable that we think there won't be a severe impact or change in terms of the vehicle movements, etc., on the street.
You want to come back, Barry?
The increased number of bedrooms that are going to be there isn't going to be an increase of some description in traffic flow is beyond me, but fine, I'll park that one. We'll agree to disagree, but I can't see how, if you're having more people coming to go to the hotel, and I speak as someone who uses facilities like this just about every few weeks, and I know what it's like needing to park, carry your cases, and also have seen some disabled people struggling to cope when this has been done in other cities as well. So we need to be cognizant of that. So I'll park that one, if metaphorically and literal.
Just to add, in terms of actually, if people were driving to this hotel, Victoria Gate car park, which is just opposite, is a 24-hour car park with it's only £5 to park overnight in Victoria Gate. So actually, in terms of city centre hotels, actually the parking provision is actually quite high, and it's very, very close. And there is, disabled parking within Victoria Gate. Yeah, I know you're talking about drop off, but I just wanted to add that in there as well, that, so there is, very nearby parking provision. Okay.
Could you, for the recording, put your mic on when you're speaking, Barry?
The tree.
Yeah, so on the street trees, don't have comment from Glenn as to whether it would be possible. The applicant commissioned a feasibility study to be undertaken, which has been submitted, and that includes images showing where the underground services lie. And the easement requirements. I know they've also had discussions with Yorkshire Water. I've not been involved in those discussions, but the advice is that it wouldn't be possible where, and they've been specifically looking at where the pavement widens, so not to have the street trees within the middle of the pavement, but there's a couple of instances where the footway is built out. And the feedback from that study is that it wouldn't be possible, hence the proposal to have those movable planters, but they would be an upgrade on what's existing.
Okay. But have you had that verified by council officers independently? Because one of my criticisms is that the council relies too much on developers marking their own homework, telling us that everything's going to be fine, and there doesn't seem to ever be any independent verification. And I'm asking, have we independently verified the information that's been given by the applicant?
The information has been shared with our landscape team, who haven't argued that it would be possible, or to argue against what the feasibility does say. I mean, I'm happy to have that further discussion following this meeting.
Thanks very much. It's Councillor Khan and then Councillor Dye.
Thank you, Chair, and John, thank you for the presentation. As also a former champion for Leeds Kirkgate Market, I know how hard it is. And I do welcome the development, and there has been a massive progress being made on the butcher row by looking at the image. John, how confident are you if the application gets granted that the development will take place, please?
It's a bit of a difficult one for me to answer that. It might be that the applicants could say more. I mean, just I suppose the application's with us, so that would suggest there's an intention to get on with the build. I know they've been keen to get it to plans panel at the first opportunity, and I think there's now a contract signed with Premier Inn. I think I'm right in saying that. So I think there's a good chance that we'll see the development come to be.
I know the developers are with us, or at least the applicant is. Would you like to come forward and address that point, please?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jane Warren. I'm Chief Officer for Active Leeds and Operations, which cover Kirkgate Market. Just to confirm to Councillor Khan, the developer, the operator is in place, and the council budget capital funding is also in place to deliver the scheme alongside the prudential borrowing case for the equipment for the gym.
Thank you very much. Are you satisfied with that, Councillor Khan? Yes, thank you. Councillor Dye, please.
Thank you. I want to come back to the trees, and I think that planters seem to me a bit of a kind of a poor alternative. And are there other options that we could explore? For example, the opposite side of the street, is that a possibility for planting, or walls or roofs or something that's better than planters?
John? Oh, sorry. No, I'll go.
So just in terms of the street trees, there is a valid case that the underground services really do restrict what you can put in the footway on either side of the road. And also street trees, normally we would want them to be set back from the edge of carriageway as well. Nothing's impossible, but it just becomes, actually, if you have to divert a lot of services and a water main, is whether there's space to divert it, and then actually how much it's going to cost. And there is a point where there has to be a decision that actually it's not viable. So in this instance, I'm actually quite, I think it's acceptable that case has been made. And from what I've seen of the report that has been submitted showing that viability, that feasibility study, I think there may be potential for a street tree a bit further down, but it would have to go right in the middle of the footway. It's potentially something that could be explored if members would like us to do that. But obviously, it's still a sort of a possibility rather than a probability.
Are you okay with that response? Or do you have any further ideas you'd want to have explored, Katie?
I don't have any ideas. I'm just looking for us to maximise carbon capture in terms of planting, and I don't know whether that be a tree further down the street, or as I say, planting on roofs or walls, or even replacing the planters with bigger planters. I'd just like it to be noted that it just seems that we're going backwards, and I would rather us go on level or up rather than backwards.
Could I suggest that a relevant officer has a conversation with Councillor Dye outside the meeting on that issue, so they could perhaps explore things together? Yeah, okay. Sorry, I hadn't noticed you indicating. Please come back.
That's okay. I just stayed because you raised the tree point, and I wanted to pick up on Councillor Anderson's point. I did have a conversation with Glenn Gorner because I've been here a long time, and he and I have planted a lot of trees together. We did review the drawings, and we also sent off for the feasibility just to really bottom out whether it was technically feasible or not. It's a real challenge, and the easement really puts the tree at quite significant risk of failure. So I'd rather not plant a tree and it not fail than plant one and it did. So, but yes, we can explore other options, Councillor Dye, but it's really limited, and trees in the centre of footways where we've got so many pedestrian movements, push chairs, double buggies, wheelchairs, etc., is a challenge for us. I think it's probably worth reflecting on the amount of work. We have done an immense amount of work on tree planting in the city centre, taking away highway infrastructure, creating new green spaces, probably in the region of about 1,000 new street trees, if you include Air Park coming forward next year. So we've done a lot of work. It's just obviously reflecting on sometimes the underground conditions just defeat us.
Okay, thanks very much for that explanation. Councillor Brooks.
Thanks, Chair. So page 108, 8.5. I've just got a bit of a question around the hot food takeaway side of things, right? So, as things currently stand with the application before us, there'd be a maximum of 2 hot food takeaways, right? So my first question is there enough waste management space to support that number of hot food takeaways? But then the second part of the question is, if the proposed gym in future moves or is closed down or is not successful in some way, that would then mean that there's potentially 7 hot food takeaways. So would there be enough waste management space put aside for that number of takeaways, or would it be more sensible to limit the number, like, rather than it being like every other? And then a second question, an entirely different thing, right? I noted on page 116 that there's a slight potential for human remains relating to a 17th century plague outbreak, right? So what happens if there's a plague pit discovered? What happens? Please, I want to know, because I'm nosy, not because I'm worried about it, but I just want to know. Thanks.
2 interesting questions for you there, John.
Yeah. Right, on the hot food takeaways, I think if they decided to subdivide the gym space to create multiple units, we'd expect a planning application to be submitted, and then we'd have a level of control about what the end operation was. I think from memory, the hot food takeaway, seeks to avoid clustering of the hot food takeaway SPD seeks to avoid clustering of hot food takeaways. I think on any shop row, there's a maximum number. I think in this case, if there's sort of about 10 units, there's only about 3 hot food takeaways. I need to double check that. I mean, at the moment we're proposing that there's a condition to control it, which says there'd be no hot food takeaways adjoining one another. So in that sense, I suppose it would limit it to 3. But I think following this, I'll speak to that if we think there's any further restriction needed on that. Happy to explore. In terms of your second question, I mean, I'm sort of reporting just what West Yorkshire Archaeological Services have advised, and they've asked for a programme of archaeological works while demolition and construction takes place. But in terms of how that's recorded and what's done about a plague pit, I don't know.
Would you like to come back on either of those, Councillor Brooks?
I would be delighted to. On the second point, we can all find out together, and it'll be a lovely learning experience. But on the first, you didn't quite answer my question about whether there's enough space allocated for waste management for the proposed number of hot food takeaways. So if that could just be looked into and made sure that we're not overrun with rats, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you. Can I take any more questions from anybody? Councillor Campbell.
Just a quick one. Alan, can you bring up the frontage? I'm just thinking I look really red today. Oh, right, okay. Yeah. Yes. Ho, ho, ho. Bar humbug. The one that's straight on, sorry. Might be earlier on. That one, which is a bit small. You did touch on the end gable, which, as I'm looking at that drawing, this side is the left-hand end, and you did say that it's been designed to reflect the simple, I think was the word you, the simple end of the Leeming building. I suppose the Leeming building's got a simple end because they were expecting to build something else to fasten on the end at some point, and never did. So I suppose the question I'm asking when I was standing on the street today, if you look at all the other Victorian red brick buildings in that area, they've all got something at either end to differentiate them. So I was like, when I look at that drawing in relation to the Leeming building, there's a gap, which is a glazed structure. With hindsight, I'm wondering why we didn't actually perhaps put something else in there to fill that gap in, because it's going to be an odd gap. But is there any detail on that end corner to make that clear that that's the end of the building in the way that the Victorians did on the rest of the street? And I suppose if the students are still with us, I'd suggest you go down and stand on this street and look at the roof of the Victorian Market Hall, Leeming building, because I was saying to Daljit earlier on today, it's an intricate roofscape of domes and pillars and finials and all sorts of stuff, none of which we ever do on this one. But I think it would be nice if we can, with the development looking back from the outdoor market, manage to preserve at least a view of that scape, because it's fairly unique and reflects, I think, the days when the council had perhaps more civic pride in its buildings than it does at the moment, and we're not afraid to go for something fancy. It's well worth a trip down there if you ever get a chance. But certainly some detailing at the end to end that building, if we're not going to fill in the gap, I think will be nice. And that can be brick detailing.
We've just been looking at a closer picture of the side, which looks as if it's a photograph that was taken by Jonathan.
It's just on Google Street View.
Yeah. Do you want to just explain what you're saying?
Yes, I mean, Stephen might want to come in on this point, but the wraparound of the building, the gable end of that building is quite detailed, actually. It's got string courses that turn the corner, and there is some sort of detailing up the gable towards the chimney as well. So arguably it wasn't necessarily envisaged that there would be further buildings along there, and that might explain why we've left a bit of a gap because of the heritage status of the building. But beyond that, John might want to explain the actual detail of the new proposal as well, and the rationale, or even Steve may wish to come in on that point.
Shall we have Steve in first?
If he knows about.
Steve, would you like to address the issue under discussion?
Thank you very much, Chair. I think the If we could go to slide 61, it shows the end elevations. 61, there we go, the middle one. It's a shame I can't enlarge it, but it pretty much mirrors what is the Victorian end of the existing, as Jonathan's pointed out. Unfortunately, and it's a case with all drawings, the eye does not pick up no matter how well you draw it, but there's a typical almost mirror in featuring on the return corner and the string courses. So it is not a blank gable and boring. You know, the feature of the bit you can see that looks darker is actually indented panels and what have you. So there is a feature, there is a design there. Does that help? Yeah.
I think
Well, thank you for the explanation. I wasn't actually expressing a view about the detailing of the centre panel. It was just effectively some, and you tell me it's there, some corner works to basically finish the building. I think if you see what I mean. But so I'm happy with the explanation.
Okay, is there anything further you wanted to ask about or further explanation of, Councillor Campbell? No. Good. Any further questions, please? No, so can we go straight on to comments then, please?
This will surprise you, Chair, but I actually think this potentially this has can be a good development. It potentially has the ability to, I was going to say, lift that area around the market, and I think the problem we've had is that we've had development all around the market, which has created quite a vibrant cityscape, but the market itself, sorry, Lee, and I know we've all had problems with the market itself seems not to have moved as far forward as the rest of the city. And I do think that this potentially, with the links through into Butcher's Row, we might have the ability to increase footfall and particularly later afternoon and evening use on that section of Butcher's Row. Because it seems to me that it's a wasted resource in many ways, because we've now got thousands of people living in the city centre who are potential customers for the market, and yet the market generally is closed by about 4 o'clock. And so actually that whole new customer base, and it seems to me that potentially Butcher's Row could be a focal point for food, fast food, etc., street food, or what we're calling it. And so I think that this is potentially a development that lifts the market. And so that's something we should support. We've gone through various discussions in relation to design. It doesn't reflect the Victorian building, but let's be honest, it's a functional building which is doing what it says. There may be issues in relation to traffic, but I think whatever you do down there, there'll be issues in relation to traffic. So it seems to me that if we can move this development forward, it has a double benefit. It has a double benefit. And therefore, surprisingly, it may surprise you, but I'll propose that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Well, thank you very much indeed. I know that Councillor Khan wants to come in, and I'll come back for a seconder when he's done that. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Chair. As I said earlier on, as the former champion for the Leeds Kirkgate market, I think this development will be remarkable for the area, and it will uplift the area at the same time also. And it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and round east of that area, this was the missing piece. And if once this gets developed, we will have a full puzzle, picture. Yeah, like I said to you, Chair, I do welcome, and it will be good development and for the market and also for the local area as well. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Blackburn.
Welcome the development, and I hope we can get on with building it. I mean, we've had a number of versions of this, and this seems to be better still. I think it's long overdue we do something down George Street. Some of the buildings down there were terrible, particularly 1930 ones. So if we can get on it as quick as possible and get something there and put a bit more pride in at side at market.
Thank you, Councillor Brooks.
Thanks, Chair. Just briefly, I think that this is really well designed and really well considered, and I'm very excited for there to be so many uses in one. I mean, you look at the site and it's actually quite small. It's going to have a gym in it. It's going to have a hotel in it. It's going to have it's bringing a lot to the table. I think it's really, really exciting. So yeah, I'm really happy with it. Actually, I'm really happy with it. I look forward to it being completed, and fingers crossed that there are no plague pits.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson, and then Councillor Campbell.
Again, just briefly, despite the concerns I raised, I do think this is a good use of that particular site. It will bring it alive. I think this type of provider, as in Premier Inn, will be good for the area. It's something that is probably needed in this location. Yes, I've got my concerns, but the negatives are far outweighed with the positives in general terms.
Okay, so I've had a proposal. Oh, do you want to come back in before we?
Chair, sorry, I forgot something. It related to the hot food takeaway potential. Given that hot food takeaways now seem to involve a considerable amount of delivery rather than simply being a hot food, you taking it away yourself, somebody else takes it away for you. I think that might be an issue you need to look at and perhaps address before we grant the full permission, because that will have a material effect on that road. Particularly if you've got 5 or 6 people sipping in and out delivering. Okay, so could we look at that as well? Sorry, Chair, to put that one in.
Fair point. I've seen that situation many times actually throughout the city, and I like the street food idea. If there's any way we could promote the use of the frontage for that. Okay, so you're proposing the recommendation, Councillor Campbell. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Khan. All of those in favour, please. 1, 2, 3. I think that's unanimous. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. So I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda this afternoon. Thank you very much for your contributions and your attendance. It's much appreciated. And let's hope we all see this wonderful development we've just been looking at built out very soon.